Michael Albrecht, Barbara Albrecht, Charlie Albrecht, Margaret Albrecht. 4 names came from the Hydra shortwave radio in my closet. I'd never get used to the unencrypted Morse code. Straight dits and daws from the machine could be intercepted by the Russians easily. If they did, then they'd know I was coming to kill their agents inside Bridal Veil Lake, a tourist town close to the border. One of many gateways in and out of the US, an important stronghold for subterfuge and espionage. Thousands of strangers visited each day on both sides. Unknown people wandering around was the norm, even in 1947. Not normal, the shocking thing I couldn't believe, was the existence of demons. They're real. They don't like to call themselves demons. At least, mine doesn't. Olive is, according to folklore, a succubus. One rainy night, I had woken up in the secret apartment above an illegal casino. My teacher, intrepid, had stood by the window, and did a poor job explaining the new tattoo on my forearm. A snake, coiled around the seductive form of an invisible woman. Olive. My demon. No, I'm not possessed. Not yet. But she and I are tethered by this magical image. Why? For what purpose? To fight the other cohorts of demons allied with the USSR. Insanity. Pure insanity. This couldn't be the real world. I must have lost my mind in the war. That made more sense. But what can a madman or anyone do? You have to go on. You have to keep going. Alton, dear. Olive, invisible as usual, greeted me as I stepped out from the shower. She never got bored of seeing me naked. I never bought the excuse she needed to be there because of the crucial importance of a time-sensitive mission. It didn't bother me, though. Olive could show herself if she chose to, and I admit I liked what I saw. If only she'd reveal her face. She never would, apparently, because, according to her, we'd fall in love. Come for the peep show again, my love? She didn't reply. I imagined her fair skin blushing, which made me smile. We didn't always get along, but the past few months had been without a mission. Quiet and pleasant. Olive could affect physical contact, and often did. She'd brush my hair with her fingers, cuddle into bed with me, and even drop light, sweet kisses over the course of a day. I had no idea why. I didn't dare question it. What if she stopped? The intimate contact was the only upside to this nightmare. I hunt demons, and the only way to do that, it seems, is through killing. Usually a lot of people. I killed Kitty Esposito. 15 years old. Demonically possessed. Brother Fairgrieve of the Samachi. A real son of a bitch. Not demonically possessed. Just serving one for a sad version of immortality. An elderly and very malnourished man. Possessed maybe by a very powerful demon who now wanted revenge. A group of nuns, a dozen maybe, also serving that powerful demon. And a very large mobster, Frank DeFranco. He used to run the illegal casino, before I ripped his hand off and gave it to the man on the other side of the breakfast table this morning. Adamo DeFranco never liked his brother. The Albrecht family, I said. Adamo's eyebrows twitched, and he set down his book. A rarity. Usually he ate, conversed, and read all at the same time. I sipped black coffee. Olive refused to use her gifts to alleviate any more hangovers after Christmas. Oh, what a nice holiday we'd had. We stayed up late and hardly fought, playing checkers and chess and avoiding all talk of the future. Adamo waved his hand, and the waiters at the Jade Empress, the restaurant serving as a front for the illegal casino in the back, exited quickly. Why'd you say that? He asked. Because, I said. They're the mission. But I don't know where to start. I figured you might point me in the right direction. My friend, the mobster, fumbled for his cigarette case. He pulled it from his jacket too fast, and swore when it landed in his scrambled eggs. Adamo, I said. What's the matter? He looked ill. The Alrechs are a powerful family in Bridal Veil Lake, Alton. They're old money, since the American Revolution. Loyalists that fled New York. You read too much, I told him. I never see you outside or with a dame. Why the history lesson? He opened the silver case onto his bacon to retrieve a rolled cigarette. His hands shook, and that made me worried. Adamo made hard decisions. Life and death stuff. All the time. To see him shaken up made me nervous. Never see you with your lady either, he said, emphasizing the your while struggling to bring the flame to his lighter. He didn't know about Olive, but saw me from time to time speaking to no one in the casino, usually at the bar. He saw the way I looked at her. He was my friend, perhaps, because he didn't immediately assume insanity was the cause. Okay. So, what is it about the Alrechs that's got you worked up? I brought out my Zippo and held his hand to light the cigarette. He inhaled and puffed, before stubbing out the lengthy remainder into his buttered toast. The Alrechs have money here, Alton. Understand? They fund a great deal of entrepreneurs through the town. If they were to suddenly disappear, there would be speculation about the party responsible. And there could be war. Wars are costly. I shrugged. I have orders. If it's any comfort, the orders means they're working for the other side. Other side? The commies, Adamo. He shook his head. I forget about legendary Canucks like you. Maybe because it's too ridiculous to believe. You're a grown man. And yet, you still don't get. There are no sides. Everyone is out for themselves, no matter what they say. Sides? Sides? You join a side to benefit one person. You. Don't kid yourself. I abhorred such debates. To me, reasoning your way to nihilism seemed like working too hard on giving up. I have orders, I repeated. To me, that ended the matter. The RCMP probably knew there'd be a potential war between crime families in town if the Alrechs suddenly died, and didn't care. Sparking such a conflict might even be in their mandate. Maybe the Alrechs weren't even demonically possessed, and I'd been given a regular mission. One could hope. I understand, Adamo said. But perhaps there's a compromise to be found. I ate a crispy wad of bacon. Agents from Camp X didn't compromise. Not part of the training. Let me send my crew to do it. I stopped chewing, and talked with a mouthful. You just said it'd spark a costly war. Yes, I did. And if it's going to happen, then I'd like to choose who pays the price. I got the drift. You're going to pin it on another outfit. Which one? Adamo looked thoughtfully at his food before responding. Does it matter? No. Sorry, it doesn't. Does that offend you? He chuckled. Hardly. I don't like criminals either. The waiters returned with more food and coffee. Adamo went back to his book, but kept up light conversation. We talked about our childhoods a little. I grew up in Bridal Veil Lake and left to fight the war. I never thought of coming back. Both my parents had died, and I'd been recruited into Camp X, training alongside MI6 and the Americans' SOS. I'd been around much of the world. I expected I would for a long time. To be stationed here as an open assassin, hardly kept a secret at all, was unexpected, to say the least. For his part, Adamo came from Hamilton, a steel city a little over an hour away. Once they'd learned how sharp he could be, Adamo's parents encouraged education, fully intending he'd live an honest and prosperous life. Frank, his older brother, would inherit the business. He had a vicious temperament for it. Too vicious, in fact. That's why his father had sent him to Bridal Veil Lake to set up a new operation, the casino. Only the bodies began to pile up. Cops can be bribed, sure, but not if you're targeting the very community they live in. Nobody wants a serial killer in their town. Adamo had been dispatched to rein in his brother, but failed. That's why he'd been complicit in his murder. It'll be done by tonight. On that dark note, we finished up, and I needed to decide what to do with my day. Olive, of course, objected to Adamo's suggestion. I rolled my eyes and took a seat by the window in our secret apartment above the secret casino. Maybe I'd go for a walk or exercise. Maybe I'd sit right here and drink a whole bottle of wine. Olive pulled on my ear. "Damn it," I said. "Stop it. You always pull my ears when you're frustrated. It's childish." "Wait, how old are you?" "Shut up, Alton," she snapped, pinching harder. "Do you know what you've done?" "What? Ow!" "Those men are all going to die." "You can't possibly know that," I said. And what if they did? Adamo had assumed correctly about my regard for mobsters. I liked my friend, and hoped he got out of his chosen life soon. But people that profited from the suffering of others didn't warrant the sympathy they lacked entirely for their fellow man. She could read my mind, she said, whenever I thought of something stupid. I had no idea if it was true or not. "Oh, darling, do try and keep up." The hold on my ear ceased. She patted my hand. Very patronizing. "You ripped a man apart with nothing but your hands." "And you," I sulked. "Couldn't have done it without you." "Alton, they're going to face off against 4 perfectly possessed people. You nearly died facing 1. You, with all the strength and speed I could give. What will these men bring to the fight?" Olive, as usual, made a fair point. Plus, if the Alrechs survived the attack, their retribution against Adamo might be swift, brutal, and total. They might even seize the casino. My secret apartment above could be found by demons. Olive, despite not actually having a body, not even a ghostly one, did reconnaissance for me all the time. In short, the mission would be compromised. "Son of a bitch," I cussed. "Don't be vulgar, my love. Handsome blondes with blue eyes should never be vulgar. It's ugly. Besides, there's still time. Adamo planned to attack at night, yes?" "Now you don't understand, my dear. I'll have to tell him the deal is off and I'll be going. He didn't like that idea at all." I thought of conspiring with him to pin it on another gang, but rejected the notion immediately. An agent couldn't help criminals succeed. That would be wrong. I grabbed my coat and found him at the bar in the casino, reading a different book. "Didn't expect to see you again this morning, Alton. What's the occasion?" He turned the page on a text called Being and Nothingness, and clearly found it fascinating. His mouth hung open a little and his eyes were wide. This is how eggheads got inebriated, I supposed. "You gotta stop your men from going to Alrechs tonight," I said. He raised a hand to silence me, and put down his book. I shouldn't have used the name. There were already a few gamblers at the tables. The band was setting up. Another made man enjoyed a Bloody Mary at the other end of the bar. "Sorry," I whispered. "You gotta call it off. It'll be a massacre. And then they'll be coming for you." He shook his head. "Your sudden empathy is heartwarming, but you're not recalling our conversation correctly. I didn't say it was happening tonight. I said it would be done by tonight. They've already left." I grabbed his arm. "Oh no," Alton, I sent a dozen. Sufficiently armed. When did they leave? Adamo started to appear concerned. 20 minutes ago. And where are they going? He gave me an address in the northern part of town, where the wealthiest residents had their mansions and acres of land. I didn't know the area well. During the Great Depression, there'd been no reason to go there. Because of Olive, I could run faster than most cars, but doing so in broad daylight would attract too much attention. I didn't own a car, and hiring a taxi would be obviously dumb. Adamo had sent his crew with stolen trucks. He couldn't lend me one of his cars for the same reason as the taxi problem. That left me with one option. I had to steal one, too. Also not advisable in broad daylight. I left the casino by the back alley as usual, and picked the first sensible car on Tour Hill. In January, Canadian winters kept the streets reasonably empty. Visitors and workers moved quickly between buildings to avoid the extreme cold. That gave me an opportunity. I waited until a car pulled up and a young couple got out. Americans from the South, judging by their lack of proper clothing. "Hey, mister," I said. The man shivered and appeared irritated. "What? How much for the car?" "What?" he reiterated. He opened the passenger door for his wife. His new wife, I assumed. A lot of people chose Bridal Veil Lake as a honeymoon destination. More than a few underestimated the cost of a tourist trap. And they weren't just arriving. They were likely headed to the Jade Empress for some cheap food. "I'll give you $4,000 for your car," I said. A new Studebaker cost around $1,500. This one looked a few years old. "Are you some kind of nut, fella?" he asked. "This car isn't worth..." "We'll take it," his wife interrupted. One of these days, I'd have to buy a car. "You just did," Olive whispered. It sounded like she sat in the passenger seat while I drove the Lakeshore Road north, the only way into the rich part of town. Stupid thought? You betcha, fella. I still owe them $3,000. Nice couple. Very trusting. How are you going to get the money? Her floral perfume, mixed with just a hint of sweat, filled the car. The scent drove me mad. It seized my whole body with excitement. Ah, hell. Call it what it is. Lust. She did it on purpose. Maybe to frustrate me. We could never be together. Not in that way. The lake and the Bridal Veil waterfall on the other side disappeared behind a fortress of trees, huge and old and dark. Branches above conspired to blot out the sun, and it felt like we drove through a tunnel to some new and foreboding world. I still have the bank card, I said. Let's hope the RCMP loaded the account. I'll bring those lovely Americans their money tomorrow. They're staying at the Bridal Veil Hotel. With $4,000, they can upgrade to something nicer. If we live. You could have bought us a much nicer car with that money, Olive added after a moment of silence. No point in debating with her. A nicer car would stick out. Or maybe this one did. When we reached the main streets of a village I didn't know existed, there were several deluxe models. Lincolns and Buicks, Packards and Cadillacs. Chauffeurs waited placidly behind their wheels, their bosses riding in the back. Too many looked our way to be a coincidence. They would remember the conservative and decidedly middle-class Studebaker. Nothing I could do about it now. I put the pedal down and continued to Alrech's Way. Yes, the family had their road named after them. Several quiet minutes passed before we saw the wrought iron gate, a monstrous black barrier, imposing with its serrated rows of pikes stretched across the road. We were still hemmed in by dense forests. I drove closer, slowly, and searched for any sign of Adamo's men. We beat him here? I asked. That gate, Olive said. Look at it, Alton. I'm no expert on the wealthy and their outlandish habits, but it seemed like the kind of thing some old rich tyrant would purchase for security and showing off. Fences extend into the trees, I said, perhaps a little ignorant of the growing unease in my invisible companion. Not likely to be an easy way through there. Adamo's goons hopefully gave up and went back to the casino. Olive's grip on my hand hurt. Alton, the gate. The gate. What? All the words died in my throat. The oily surface of the gate seemed to move. Subtle points of light streaking periodically like fireflies on a starless night. What in the hell? I said before opening the door. No. Olive's hold remained steadfast and firm. I don't like this one bit. I'm just gonna look. I'll be right back. I successfully pulled away, or she let me go. Which of us had greater physical strength remained a mystery, though my augmented muscles came from her, so I suspected Olive would win in an arm wrestling match. Free of the car, I heard a hum in the frigid air. It seemed to come from the gate itself. As I got closer, the tiny lights became clearer. In the polished steel, warped and moving images of suffering played. Hundreds of men and women suffered gruesome deaths after prolonged torture. I didn't understand how I could witness these tiny, silent projections on wrought iron. There were things in there, inhuman but masked. Their bodies shook with laughter, and crowds watching from a small audience applauded with standing ovations. The pictures rotated around the rods, until a man with the devil's face appeared. A mask as black as this gate, outlined by the way the edges blurred in time with the hum still filling my ears. The eyes held nothing. Darkness so complete, the gravity of his gaze forced me to step forward. I reached out to touch and... Alton, watch out! Olive shouted, too late. A man crashed into my side and bounced off our impact, sliding across a thick patch of ice into the snowy ditch. I hadn't budged a bit. At least the stupor had been broken. The hum and horrible movies were gone. Don't touch it, you fool! Olive shrieked before tugging my arm. I wasn't. I lied, feeling instantly ashamed. That's not true. I wanted to touch it. Then and now. Why? If I may? The man called from the ditch. I hadn't forgotten about him. His ineffectual attack had rather put me at ease. He would have shot if he had a gun. So running into me had been his best go. Therefore, the man was not worth a nickel of worry. From the ditch climbed a rail-thin kid, no more than 20, yet older somehow, as if he carried a burden behind his eyes. I knew it well. The burden of knowing, of having seen, the mass destruction of lives without glory, regard, and memory. You're a soldier, I said. He straightened up, but lost composure in a fit of coughing. Yes, sir, he gasped. Corporal Bernard Irving. Captain Alton Anderson, I replied. You must have just caught the tail end of the war, Corporal. Bernard saluted. Sir, yes, sir. I assisted the British at Bergen-Belsen, sir. The smirk fell off my face. Bergen-Belsen had been a concentration camp of extreme horror and depravity. Around 60,000 starving, dying people, and the dead everywhere. I'm sorry, I told him. He put on a pair of thick spectacles. Wearing glasses didn't necessarily bar a man from service, but those lenses looked too heavy for his meager frame to carry. A nervous smile crept across his pale face. You're wondering how I did it? How I got in? Kid, You're a jerk sometimes, Alton, Olive said. My father got me enlisted. I begged him. He's a wealthy man. Was a wealthy man. And I wasn't this consumed before the war. He'd revealed a lot of information fast. TB? There's that new drug, I said. Streptomycin, Bernard said. A miracle for those afflicted by tuberculosis. Not me. Scarring on my lungs might as well be TB, but it came from the fires we made at Bergen-Belsen. We didn't know what to do with so many dead. Buildings were full of pests. Some say mustard gas had been stockpiled from the First War, but I don't think so. The dead themselves, when they turn to ash, release enough toxic substances to ruin a man's lungs. There were thousands. I tried to honor each one. Too many. The boy coughed hard onto the back of his hand, and I saw the blood before he could hide it. Thank you for your service, I said, and I meant it. I'd seen horrible things during the war, but not that. Never that. Bernard, why are you here? Why did you run into me? He gasped for air as he answered. If you touched that gate, Bernard pointed at it with his bloodied hand, you'd be dead. Just like my father. I waited patiently for the end of his coughing fit. Bernard shook his head. You're not going to believe this, Captain. The Alrechs are depraved, evil servants of Satan himself. I believe you. They're also commies. Pardon? My quick agreement had him puzzled. It's alright. I work for the RCMP. Specifically, I work for the secret branch of the RCMP. None but a few, and now you, know exist. The evil that you suspect, but maybe can't confirm, is real. I'm here to help you, I feel. But you better tell me everything. Get in the car, son. You look frozen. Reluctantly, he tore his eyes away from the road beyond the gate. A bend. The first of many, no doubt, hiding a grand mansion. When Bernard sat in the passenger seat, I hesitated. Had he just sat on Olive? Don't be dull, darling, Olive cooed. I put the car into reverse. Wait, don't go, Bernard objected. We have to stay and wait for it to open. That's how we get in without touching it. And dying. I braked and put the Studebaker in park. Okay, now tell me everything. He did. And the tragic tale can be summarized only a little. I'll try to be brief while giving Bernard the respect he deserves. When he returned from the war, Bernard didn't speak. He didn't read or listen to the radio. He'd forget to eat, and soon became ill from coughing fits. Doctors looked at his lungs and believed the scarring to be TB. Luckily, his wealthy father could access the medicine he needed to cure tuberculosis. Less lucky, as Bernard had said, the scarring had been from breathing in the smoke of Bergen-Belsen. He soon began to lose weight. Death seemed inevitable. His father used his vast resources to search for a doctor to help his only son. Maud Kelsey was the result. A young and beautiful woman, recently graduated, and very confident she could successfully bring Bernard back from the brink of death. He is very close, Alton, Olive breathed into my ear. Unpleasant news delivered in an excruciatingly alluring way. I chose to ignore her, and let Bernard finish. He loved Maud from the very moment she entered his bedroom. She cared for him, yes, and improved his health. But she also took him back from hell, where he felt his soul would remain, forever watching the bodies in the fires. Not long ago, he'd regained mobility and control over his fits. I wanted to propose, he said, rubbing his hands, wringing out the frost in front of a vent. But then the Alrechs called my father. They required a doctor for Margaret, who was apparently in labor. Here, Bernard looked disturbed. Margaret, by my count, is only 13. Maud had gone to the Alrechs and promptly disappeared. Bernard's father called, but Michael Alrech, Margaret's father, denied having requested aid in the first place. Bernard sought help from the police to no avail. The Alrechs' influence and power gave them certain immunities. That's when Bernard and his father came to the gate themselves looking for answers. That's when his father touched the gate, grabbing hold of the bars. Instantly, he died. And worse, an internal fire consumed his body in a flash. Bernard could only watch as the wind carried away another pile of ash, indistinguishable from a lice-ridden mattress or a uniform inadequately filled by a skeleton. He waited at the gate, praying to wake from the nightmare. The sound of racing cars from the road sent him into the trees to hide. 3 cars full of men, Adamo's men, drove toward the gate, which inexplicably opened to let them pass. Too stunned to move, Bernard had missed his chance to gain access to the Alrechs' property. "So you're waiting," I said. "Yes. It has to open sometime. I have to save her. She's all I have left." "Are you armed?" I asked him. His eyes drifted back to the ditch. "My rifle." I left the car to fetch a Lee Enfield leaning against a pine tree. Bernard had brought back his service weapon from the war. These guns were powerful, and stood up well in the fields of war. "You should stay here, Bernard," I told him when I got back in. "Keep the engine running, or drive home to take some rest. I can handle it." "Sir, excuse me, but no," he interjected. His eyes lingered on the rifle. "I must go in. If I don't..." Another coughing fit seized him. His complexion reddened, oxygen deprived and angry. "If I don't go..." Here he held his breath and spoke with only a great effort. "I'll never forgive myself. If she dies..." Bernard reached for his rifle. I wasn't about to take it without his permission. So we waited in the car, engine running to keep warm. I found a shallow point in the ditch, and risked driving across to hide our presence from anyone entering or exiting. Hours passed into evening, and the sun began its early January decline at just past 4. The thrum of another engine made us look at one another. Bernard had his eyes shut. I don't think he'd given in to sleep, though. The gate swung open, ponderous arms parting to release a teal-colored station wagon. I only caught a glimpse of the driver and the other passengers inside, but didn't think they were Adamo's men. Both driver and passenger had gray hair, and may have worn black. "Servants?" I asked Bernard. "Those not currently living in the manor," Bernard said. "Off to their cottages for the night. Now hurry, please, sir. I don't want to..." I put the Studebaker in drive before he finished speaking, and we glided through the barrier long before it even began to close. Before the first bend in the road, however, I heard the loud clang of the gate shutting, and it sounded like a bell. "Never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee," Olive said ominously. I rolled my eyes. "We're unnerved enough as it is," I thought at her. If she could hear, she didn't say. Bernard looked more ill than a moment before. Who are you talking to?" he asked. What'd you say?" "I didn't say anything." My attention had shifted back to the road and the end of the tree line. "The veil between life and death is very thin for him," Olive said, more quietly. "That where you live, Olive? Between life and death?" "You live on a rock in infinity," she retorted. "According to your cognitive limits. So where really do you live?" Bernard coughed. Olive and I wisely shut up. Rolling fields, deep in layers of snow, draped like a blanket over a wide and sprawling mansion. Both Victorian and medieval cosmetics done to suggest class and lordship. I didn't like it much at all. I had seen some castles in Europe. Bernard, too, probably. When those were built, times were different. Maybe those fortresses gave comfort to people. These days, however, to build a castle for one's home meant shutting out ordinary people, trying to suggest superiority. I thought the war would end that kind of thinking. I wondered how Bernard might feel, looking at such a monstrosity. Horrors taught us nothing. No hope for mankind. Someday, we'd go too far, and lose the perverse luxury of forgetting the evil we have done. It's, Bernard said slowly, different than I remember. I pulled the car up the empty gravel driveway. You been here before? He nodded. Charlie's about my age. We used to play together before the war. Well, play isn't a good word for it. I parked in the open. There were no visible lights inside or out. Bernard continued talking. He was quite cruel to his sister. To animals. I've never met a boy so angry at the world, getting so much enjoyment from causing pain. The Alrechs keep getting better and better, I said. Come on. We left the car and mounted wide steps leading to cathedral-style doors. Do you think we should knock, Captain? Bernard grinned in the gloom of the approaching darkness. I chuckled softly and grasped the oversized handle, a little reluctantly after the whole experience with the haunted gate. Bernard had saved my life. I hoped we would make it out of here alive with Dr. Kelsey. She'd get him healthy again. They'd marry, and I'd become Uncle Alton. I very suddenly wanted that for us. I pulled open the door on a huge foyer, held by shadows except where failing daylight dared to tread. Bernard did not hesitate. With the rifle leveled, he courageously entered, his steps echoing in the abyssal expanse. It tolls for him, Olive said. I wanted to tell her to stay out of it. Bernard seemed irritated whenever she spoke. No one but me could see, hear, smell, or feel Olive. At least, that's what she'd said. Bernard seemed vaguely aware of something amiss. I also hadn't spoken to Olive when she let loose with all the bell talk. I just mentally directed my criticism at her, and Bernard had somehow read my mind? I wanted to ask Olive for guidance, but feared he'd know. Kitty Esposito had lured me into an alley. Even with Olive's help, I'd nearly died. Could Bernard be doing the same trick? No, Olive said. He is dying. That is all. If he were in a demonic union, he'd be healthier. No time to debate the irony of her statement. Shut up, Alton, she snapped. Bernard stopped looking everywhere. He lowered the rifle, and instead turned back. Captain, he said, I think you need to really tell me why you're here, and what's going on. I feel like you didn't come alone. And I don't know why, but Captain, I can't shake the feeling, sir. With all due respect. I nodded. That's fair, Corporal. There's not much time, so I'll try to keep it brief. I'm not alone. And I'm assisted by a being you can't see, but have somehow sensed. Like a ghost? He asked. More like... I didn't want to worry him. More like an angel. Olive snorted like she'd found something really funny. The Alrechs, Bernard said, really are devils. Aren't they, sir? Yes. Probably. Listen, Bernard, if you see any of them, shoot first. Their commitment to evil gives them infernal powers few can contend with. You advised me to stay behind, he said, fractures in his composure, admitting fear. Hold on, I said. That Lee Anfield will do the trick fine. You're a good shot? He nodded. Despite what the glasses might suggest? Yes, sir. Very good. I entered the foyer and took the well-wrought pistol from my custom shoulder holster. "You better lead. The size of this house is obscene." "There have been additions, it seems, sir." Bernard took my suggestion anyway, and entered the wide corridor on the left. I had my Zippo to light the way, and it did little to illuminate the dark ahead. We stopped at the first light switch, and proved the electrical out of commission. A thick layer of black dust coated the edge of my index finger, the one I'd used to try and turn on the lights. Either nobody had used it in ages, or the digit who had touched the switch last had been playing with soot. An ornamental candelabra on a silver table held real candles. I lit it up, and our small pool of illumination expanded insufficiently against the gloom, but enough at least to reveal the first dead mobster. His head had been severed and placed facing the foyer. The rest of him had been crumpled and discarded, a distorted bag of fleshy matter squeezed like a sponge. "Dear God in heaven," Bernard prayed. "You weren't lying, sir. Smell. Oh God, the smell. It's the same, sir. The same." His voice rose in panic. I knew the stench of death, too. Sane men flee when they encounter the reek of decay. Soldiers don't have that privilege. "Quiet, Bernard," I said firmly. He whimpered once more before shutting his chattering teeth. Not just from fear. No boiler or furnace warmed the mansion. Tiny icicles had formed along chair rails and wainscoting. Our hurried puffs were visible. "Those servants," I said. "The ones who just left. Very loyal?" Bernard wondered. "Very insane," I added. They'd stayed on in a clearly dysfunctional household. We stepped around the body and the pool of blood and continued. Several closed doors each presented a potential location for further corpses, and the Alrechs themselves. Maud, too, but Bernard passed them by without hesitation. He didn't feel like she'd be in there. I thought my targets would not be hanging around in any of these rooms either, despite not knowing the function or purpose of any of it. This, I'm proud to say, was the first mansion I'd ever visited. The corridor turned at a right angle into the next. However, an alcove ahead held a spiraling staircase going up and down. Our humble candles reflected off the blood dripping and pooling. We knew the way, and we didn't want to go. Yet, we did. The temperature shifted dramatically as the coiling steps drilled deep into a subterranean basement. By the time we took the last step, we were soaked with sweat. Bernard's lenses clouded with steam. The candelabra became unnecessary. Abundant light poured from an open doorway. Lavender and smoke, incense filled the air, but not enough to completely hide the odor of the unholy trinity: shit, piss, and blood. "And one more," Olive said. Bernard searched everywhere for her presence, bothering him like a mosquito. "You know it. You know you do." She laughed. "I'm sorry, my love. I didn't mean to be insensitive. But a succubus lives for the stuff." A stifled moan escaped her phantasmagorical lips. Olive had gone hot-blooded in the moment. So why did I like it? A woman yawned. That was all it took to motivate Bernard to run ahead. "Maud?" I raced behind and nearly crashed into him. Neither of us were prepared for what we found. A family sat at a dinner table, enjoying an evening meal. Our sudden entrance barely concerned them. Michael Alrech, a man in his 50s, regarded us indifferently, and without turning his head. He drank deeply from a mug and smiled when he set it down. "Brother," he called across the huge dining room. A young girl turned from a pen of roving creatures, the nature of which I did not immediately understand. The girl, Margaret Alrech, I assumed, bent low to the floor and crawled like an animal across the stonework floor. Her speed and dangling tongue made Bernard gasp. Margaret sniffed the air.
More men! More men!
Michael laughed.
Do you see how they arrive?
He asked the woman at the next chair. Barbara Alrech, around 40, chortled madly, and quickly untied the knot holding the top of her dress. Her breasts spilled out onto her plate, and she gestured to them.
Dost thou come to feast?
She inquired, her voice deep, grating. Bernard's childhood friend made his presence known in a simpler, yet somehow more chilling way.
Hello, Bernard,
he said.
Have you finally come to play?
The four of them watched us. Bernard should have shot right away. I should have done the same. Where Margaret had been when we entered stood a hay-filled pen. Within, only partially visible, were tiny, wiggling figures.
You,
I shouted. Olive tried to stop me. The Alrechs did not.
Alton,
Olive urged.
Why is it always children with you sick freaks?
I seethed. The latch on the gate tore like tissue paper under my hand. I threw open the exit and stepped on the dense layer of hay. Where had they gone? Where were the children? A muffled coo came from beneath the stack.
Alton,
Olive said.
Do not move.
What's the meaning of this? I accused the disturbing family around the table. Each wore a painfully wide smile under insanely excited eyes. The first set of teeth sank through my trousers and into my calf. A second and third fought over a forearm. Before I could comprehend anything, a third and fourth infernal infant chomped rapidly through the back of my coat. Even after so many years of training and experience, nothing had prepared me for the moment these gray-skinned creatures, infant-sized, attacked. By teeth and jaw, they facially resembled snub-nosed dogs. Oily globes in sunken, wrinkled sockets served for eyes. Aside from the tremendous strength they possessed, the remainder of their construction looked like nearly ordinary babies. I spun around wildly, my strength already beginning to wane. The Alrechs laughed. Bernard rushed to intervene. Margaret leapt through the air and pressed his face into the stonework. His glasses snapped. The lenses ground between flesh and floor. Olive, I cried. Help!
Not yet,
she said.
Not yet, remember. Only once per...
Too many words. The monster on my calf had chewed through the fabric. I watched, helpless, while it tore meat from bone, running away with the majority of my foot into the cover of the hay.
Good show! Good show!
Michael Alrech pounded the table with his palm. The whole room shook. Dust fell from the beams. Olive, I begged. Somehow I hadn't dropped the well rod. Scarcely aware, I pressed the tip against the head of a forearm chewer and fired. The pop of a well rod pistol is very quiet, not like a typical gun at all. The weird baby monster slackened and ceased to feast.
No,
Barbara shouted in not the voice of a woman. She stood up slowly and stalked across the floor, snatching me up. I didn't have the blood supply or enough limbs to stand, so I hung limply, bleeding out and still being consumed. I groaned. So much pain. The room began to darken. Barbara shook me roughly.
Not yet. You die when I say. After killing one of my progeny, your suffering will be long indeed.
Waving her other hand, the monsters unclenched and wailed. Two alike to babies. Just like babies. They continued to cry in discordant protest, until safely buried in the hidden burrows beneath the hay. My whole body shuddered, struggling to keep living.
Oh,
I couldn't manage another syllable.
Do you know how hard it is to get these pitiful bodies to produce?
Barbara said angrily.
And these Cambions were special. No human consciousness to resist. Only a blank slate to be written upon, as our lesser, but loyal, nameless slaves desired.
Possessed babies? Demon-possessed babies? What the hell was a Cambion? I'd heard that word before. Kitty Esposito, or the demon inside her, had said it in regard to Olive and me. Half human, half demon. Barbara's laughter did not match her body. The woman was shapely and feminine, beautiful if not for her insanity. Her voice, manner, and guffaws belonged to a heavy-set laborer.
Stand aside, succubus, Barbara said. Lilith and her impure daughters have long been a nuisance to Asmodai. Our great prince abhors your presence in the court. We condemn your intrusion in our cultivation here.
She released her grip on my hair. I hit the floor, but didn't feel a thing. So badly did I want to sleep. Olive manifested. She touched my back. I could still feel her.
You have chosen to serve the humans on the other side of the world,
she said to Barbara.
They are extremely conservative in their passions. I can understand why Lord Asmodeus would choose them.
All of the Alrechs hissed and protested as if on cue.
A succubus dares,
Charlie shouted.
They always do, don't they?
Michael added. The other side, this man's side, encourages gambling, lust, and prolific drug use. Does the other? Olive ventured cautiously.
Young fool,
Charlie said, rather bitterly.
Humans are the same all over the world. Their needs are the same, so their desires rarely vary unless they are mad.
He examined his own hand like an addict.
This body is young. We have done much to our mutual satisfaction and enjoyment. It's not the politics, child. It's the individual flesh that matters. Behold what the Soviets arranged for us. Riches and pleasures, enough to make a succubus blush. What have you? A simple man. He does not even allow you the pleasure of his body.
Charlie sneered, disgusted.
You are anchored like a toddler. Even for a lowly daughter of Lilith. This is shameful. Why have we chosen this side? Really? Why choose this? Olive,
I rasped, flirting with unconsciousness.
Help.
So tired.
A little longer,
she said.
Just a bit more.
Barbara scooped me up by the throat.
Enough. He dies. And you, succubus, will be free as the universe intends.
My mother, Olive countered, standing tall, shapely, in her supposedly modest red shirtwaist dress. I longed to touch her brown curls before I died. Could I touch her? The veil between life and death must have been dreadfully thin for me at that moment.
My mother,
Olive repeated,
intends otherwise.
The side of Barbara's skull popped like a balloon. Blood, bone, and brain flew across the room, and fell anticlimactically to the floor. Margaret had given up her hold on Bernard. Still on all fours, she'd drawn close to Olive and sniffed her... Well, I really can't say where. Olive let it happen for this reason, I suppose. She vanished, and the possessed girl cast about anxiously. Enough time for Bernard to fire again. The back of Margaret's head exited from her face. She dropped, the same as her mother. Her hot claret made a gruesome rug, mingling with my spent blood. Neither Charlie nor Michael seemed concerned. Not even when Bernard shifted to aim at the table. He hadn't been lying. Bernard could shoot. Another bullet took the smug off Michael's face. And his face. He slumped over, and his empty soup bowl filled with gore. Charlie had time to turn and pretend to yawn before Bernard shot him in the eye. He smiled and crumpled off the chair.
Olive,
I prayed, Only seconds away from death. I knew it. Why didn't she? Bernard got to his feet and came to the edge of my blood pond.
Captain, there's nothing. I'm sorry I didn't listen. No,
Olive insisted.
Bernard, turn around. Alton, tell him not to take his eyes off them.
A gurgle and some spit was all I could manage.
Bernard,
Olive raged. The boy flinched. Training kicked in. He brought the rifle to bear just as Barbara sprang to her feet and swiped the glasses off his face. Another shot. It must have missed. Barbara laughed. Her bare feet slapped against the stone. Olive. I concentrated on communicating with her.
Olive, heal me. Bernard is going to die.
Shh, darling, she said.
I won't let you cross. We can't win this fight. Our best hope is they think you're dead and toss your body away.
Olive. I said her name like a warning. I cannot allow this. Heal me at once.
Why? So they can tear you apart again? Only once per day. That's all I can manage. Bernard is a noble human, but he's already close to death. He may die tomorrow.
Then I will give him tomorrow. I must try. Please, Olive.
We've had our differences and many disagreements. We'll never be the same if you let him die without trying to save him.
Another shot, followed by another. He'd soon be out of ammunition. The other Alrech bodies reanimated to a chorus of deranged laughter. Bernard grunted and gasped.
Let's eat him alive,
Margaret suggested cheerfully, with the natural chipper of a teenage girl.
String him. Place him on the table. Charlie and Michael, hold his arms. Margaret, his legs. I will signal the feast. You may have the torso and the organs, after I finish with the head.
Her perversion, strangely, put their maddening guffaws to silence as they set to work. The boy struggled and begged.
No, stop, please.
I heard his clothes being torn. Powerful demons with the Alrech's body patched fatal wounds and brought them back from death. Kitty Esposito had been possessed by lowly, nameless devils. A bullet under the chin had ended her pact. I got one thwarted near-death experience a day from Olive. Did the Alrechs get more?
I don't know, Olive admitted. But they seem awfully calm, don't you think? Protect Canada. That was the point, wasn't it? Protect Canada, the West, and all the people hoping to do nothing more than live a peaceful life. Don't you want that, Olive? Don't you want that? For us? Us? We've been together for months now. I've never felt like this before. I want more, Olive. Don't you? Alton. But if you let this happen, my love, there it'll be. Between us forever.
I heard the impact of Bernard hitting the table, cracking plates, scattering cutlery. He'd stopped begging. Charlie or Michael screamed.
Hold him, fools,
Barbara stormed.
My eye,
Charlie lamented fraudulently, for he soon chuckled.
Bernard is swift. Who knew?
The struggle resumed.
Now, Olive. It has to be now. Or never.
Strength flowed through my veins. What had been lost on the floor returned pure to my body. Flesh regenerated and mended under her gentle massage. Sight came next, and then anger. Barbara bent over the boy. The others had followed her instructions. Charlie had a butter knife in his eye. 3 swats of the well rod. 3 brownings into the skulls of Michael, Margaret, and Charlie. They dropped again, and Barbara sighed.
You are more powerful than most of Lilith's trash,
she said, speaking to Olive.
But you must...
Another swat. Another temporarily dead body. Bernard scrambled to get out from under her. He crashed onto the floor and practically ran on all fours to his rifle. In shock, he looked to me for his next order.
"You died. He died. You died,"
he muttered.
"Shoot them again if they start to come back."
I put away the well rod and got out the garrote, which had a second job. I removed the leather sheath on the razor wire. The garrote became a giggly saw, a tool of surgeons, coroners, and secret agents. Margaret's head slipped off with only a little work. I kicked it across the room. Rather than wait, Bernard began a patrol, blasting each Alrech until I could remove the heads far away from their bodies.
"Does this have any hope of working?"
I asked Olive. Bernard winced, but didn't question. He knew I wasn't asking him.
"I don't know," she said. "Asmodeus is tremendously powerful. I don't know who influences these bodies, but they're certainly named, and have his favor."
"I don't understand what they're doing," I said. "Are the Alrechs and their guests gathering intel? If they're just killing..."
"The killing, the breeding, is for leisure,"
Olive replied.
"The Alrechs wanted it."
I looked at Charlie and his little sister.
"Yes, even she. Her possession is perfect. She did not resist. The money and the influence of this family is what the Soviets wanted. Adamo wasn't wrong. Even if we manage to end them, send their demons to the depths, there will be hell to pay. I think their entire role was to simply increase crime and destabilize society. That's a Soviet desire, too. Can't get ahead if we're fighting one another."
"You mean the criminals? Seems like a boon to Canada if they kill one another." Olive sighed. Even her disappointment held an allure. I wished I could see her. All of her.
If only life were that black and white. I think... Do you mean what you said, Alton?
Her question hung over my neck like the mariner's albatross.
What I said?
I stalled for time. I knew what I'd said. I meant what I'd said. But I was afraid she didn't feel the same.
You said...
Margaret Alrech's eyes opened. Her severed head had landed against the cambion pen. Her mouth opened wide, stretching, and then relaxed into a chilling smile.
"Run,"
Olive advised. "Now." Bernard heeded her warning, but in the wrong direction. He ran for a heavy door across from where we'd entered. Coughing, gasping for air, he threw open the doorway on a kind of cellar or miniature dungeon, I suppose. A great uproar of men poured forth from a cramped cell, the kind one might see at a zoo. Instead of animals, however, these were the remnant forces Adamo had sent to kill the Alrechs. A dozen, less one, screamed and begged for their lives. Their Tommy guns had been piled in the center of the room, on top of their clothes. Bernard froze.
"It's the spook,"
the naked men muttered in the dark.
"Here to spring us, spook?"
A surprisingly calm man, naked like the rest, inquired while resting his back against the bars.
"Or are you one of them wackos out there?"
I didn't have words. Neither did Bernard. He couldn't stop shaking. These men, this group of men, I had discarded in my imagination. They were criminals. They exploited the weak for profit. The world would be better off if they died. But for now, I needed them. And I felt disgusted with myself. "Only now?" Olive asked jokingly. I was no better. They used people. I needed to use them. If we were going to live, we needed to use each other.
"Adamo sent me,"
I half lied. He hadn't sent me exactly, but he knew where I was going.
"We're getting out of here. But it's gonna mean working together. You got that?"
They didn't object, so I continued.
"The bodies out there are coming back to life. You saw it already, I'm sure."
The naked men and their haunted expressions said I'd assumed correctly.
"We're We're going to obliterate them, I said, so there's no chance of returning. Then we're burning this maniac mansion to the ground. Got that?
The men roused and gathered, and were rightfully astonished when I broke the locks on their cells with only my hands. They rushed forth and took up arms. Bernard stopped them from running into their deaths.
If you go now, he gasped, we all die. Form a line. A line.
He pushed them into a column, the naked soldiers fighting for their lives. They were as frightened as any band of recruits meeting combat for the first time. No doubt Adamo had selected men with fighting experience. The majority had never killed before, never been in war. Not one among us had faced such a doom. We were all scared of the same thing, and that made us brothers.
When they come, I said, do not wait for my call. Fire. Fire every last bullet. Here we stand. There is nowhere to run or retreat. It's here. It's now. Or we die.
The first Alrech, Barbara, filled the doorway. I put another Browning in her head. Nobody else followed my instructions.
Fire! Fire, damn it!
Tommy guns obliterated what should have been a corpse 3 times already. Bernard held back. Low ammunition. Maybe none. Charlie came next. His father after. Margaret sprang over their bullet-ridden bodies and got close enough to die at point-blank range. By the time she went down, however, Barbara began to revive. The mobsters backed away, dismayed and horrified.
Shoot her!
I yelled. They did. Bernard pointed to the door. I nodded.
Out, now! Run for your lives!
I shouted after Barbara went down again. I leapt over the bodies and put another bullet in Charlie along the way. Bernard came next, and did the same for Michael. The blast removed his face entirely.
Come on, Bernard called. We don't have time.
The bullets in Margaret fell out, and sounded like dimes dropping on a sidewalk. Pleasant, if not for the finger she stabbed beneath the nearest man's throat. So fast. No time to scream. Gleefully, the girl adjusted her grip and removed the majority, maybe all, of his spine. The men panicked and ran. One put himself back into his cell. Of the 11, only 3 had the sense or luck to find the exit. Margaret killed more. Gouging eyes, tearing ears, throttling and bashing, biting and clawing, and laughed all the while. The other Alrechs resurrected before we closed the door.
Hey,
one of the mobsters, small and with a scar through his eyebrow, objected.
The others.
They're gone, Bernard said. I picked up the dinner table and slammed the length against the door.
Seal them in.
Bernard and the mobsters tossed the chairs on top of the table. The first impact against the door nearly knocked me off balance. All of us put our strength against theirs. Within seconds, our predicament seemed hopeless. We couldn't hold them forever.
Run,
I said to Bernard. The others.
I should be able to give you...
The scarred man and his colleagues didn't budge.
We're with you, Spook. Those freaks killed my friends. My cousin,
said the second.
Brother,
said the third.
Maud,
Bernard offered for his part. The top of the door cracked. All held onto the table.
Last shell,
Bernard shared. I thought of Olive.
This is hopeless,
I wanted to say.
You could escape, she said. You're fast enough. These others will slow down the Alrechs for a few seconds.
You're testing me, aren't you? She didn't answer. Charlie's face smashed a hole through the door. Nose broken, bleeding, he grinned.
I'm having a great time.
His elation faltered quickly, however.
Who are you?
Clear a path, gentlemen, Adamo said calmly as he entered the gore-ridden dining room, carrying a flamethrower. Another man wore the fuel tank, and brandished a bandolier of grenades over his shoulder. Adamo shot a stream of liquid fire into the now vacant hole. Charlie had fled into the cell, revealing a potential weakness: fire. Could they be undone if reduced to ash? We were certainly going to try and find out.
Alton,
Adamo said,
would you be so kind as to move the table?
Flames danced on the polished surface. I tipped it over, within reach. The grenadier took off 3 pineapples and popped them through the hole in the door. After the explosions, I ran and plucked the remnants from the hinges. Smoke, burnt flesh, and the general foul stench of death filled the air. Bernard's first whiff started him on the worst fit of all. The scarred man tried to take him aside, but Bernard shook his head and stayed put.
Better give him another dose, Adamo,
I said. He obliged, turning the prison into a literal hell. I stood by his side and could see the 4 Alrechs crawling toward us in the flames. I saw the resolve of my friend break as they came within reach. He stepped back through the doorway and spent every drop of fuel. The bodies, all of them, were gone in the aftermath. Soot and blackened fat coated the stone walls.
Olive?
I wondered.
Are they gone? I think so. Mission accomplished.
She sounded sad. I didn't have the willpower to go over this experience with her at the moment. A flamethrower would have been really useful for the other loose end in the room, in that pen. I lit the candelabra and tossed it into the hay. Smoke, rather than flame, drove the remaining Cambion from their burrows. The grenadier, horrified, did the rest. We went upstairs. I practically carried Bernard. He'd coughed up so much blood.
He needs a doctor,
the scarred man observed pointlessly.
Maud,
he rasped.
I'll find her,
I told him. He held onto my arm.
I see her, sir. The angel. I see her face. She's...
Another episode seized control of his airways. I raced through the freezing upper hallways. Other than the temperature, nothing seemed extraordinary. The Alrechs seemed to keep their villainy generally contained to where we'd found them. It didn't bode well for Maud. If we hadn't found her already...
Hello?
Asked a woman's voice through a bedroom door.
Is someone out there?
Asked a man, too, from the same room. Maud? I ventured. Dr. Kelsey? Bernard sent me. Step back from the door. I ripped the locked handle and a fair chunk of oak to get to them. A tall, gangly, yet beautiful woman stood behind an even taller, ganglier man. He held a fire poker nervously.
Back away. Leave us alone.
Oh, slow down. I'm here to help. Royal Canadian Mounted Police. At your service. I didn't consider myself a Mountie. I'd only ever ridden a horse once at a relative's farm, but I thought the half-truth might calm them a bit, and get Mr. Kelsey to put down the poker. Bernard had told the half-truth too, perhaps a bit selfishly. He fantasized about rescuing her and could pretend they had a reciprocal love. Judging by the way these two clung to each other, I didn't think the doctor had been having an affair with her patient.
Bernard said he wanted to propose,
Olive added to my speculation.
He didn't say he was going to.
No point in mulling it over. We had to go. They followed me downstairs to the foyer. Adamo had placed his jacket over Bernard's lower half. The other mobsters had already cleared out through the open cathedral exit. My friend helped Bernard drink whiskey from a flask. He stopped when the young soldier jerked his head toward us. Toward Maud.
You're safe then.
He spoke quietly because he could manage no more.
Good.
The faint life in his eyes departed, and Corporal Bernard Irving died. Maud pushed her husband and me to kneel by his side.
Bernard,
she questioned professionally. I knew then, for sure, she had never seen Bernard as anything else but her patient. But he loved her. He loved her more than himself and his own life. I don't know what he planned to do with his affection before Dr. Kelsey, accompanied by her husband, made their house call to the Alrechs. Maybe nothing. Contentment in her happiness seemed to satisfy the young soldier enough. That's why he'd come here and why he'd given his life. I felt jealous of the man on the floor at that moment. He achieved precisely what he'd intended. All of my experience taught me no one ever gets what they want. Not truly. You don't know what you want? Olive accused me bitterly. I'm not a mod. Never will be. Will I? I couldn't assure her because I didn't know. Time for departure, Adamo declared. This place is about to burn to the ground. And fast. Alton, would you be so kind as to drive us all in your Studebaker? I nodded. I drove. The flames filled the rearview mirror. The black gate had been torn down with hooks, chains, and a truck. Adamo again. He thought out loud about the warfare to come. The whole point of framing another outfit had been to direct violence toward a rival. Now there'd simply be a vacuum of power in the underworld. Each group would suspect one another. Alliances and arrangements would shift. He felt certain a bloodbath would ensue. Have to call in relief from my father, he lamented. But doing so will suggest to others we're trying to seize control of whatever the Alrechs were doing. Don't look at me, I said. I don't have a clue. Monsters, Maud seethed. Evil, wicked things. Not human. No, they can't be. She began to weep. Her husband held her close to his chest as she sobbed into him. Mr. Kelsey searched for the words. They kept getting pregnant. We don't know how. Margaret and Barbara were both pregnant when we arrived. We helped them deliver, but the babies, they weren't... I don't know what they were. I wouldn't soon forget the Cambion offspring. They wouldn't let us go, Maud cried. They said we were needed. We didn't understand. And then Margaret came a few weeks later. Pregnant again. How? And she gave birth to twins and... Maud's terror prevented further explanation. Adamo passed his silver flask into the back seat. They justifiably drank it all. And, despite everything, fell asleep before we reached Tour Hill. Adamo sent them off to a nice hotel with 2 of his men in my Studebaker. I didn't object. If I ever laid eyes on that car again, it'd be too soon. We went into the silent and dark casino. Adamo had closed and sent everyone home during prime business hours, including the sorely needed bartender. He meandered to the bar, pointing himself at his preferred stool, but I tugged his arm toward the elevator. You saved my life today, I said. Least I can do is mix you a drink. Yeah, you could do that at the bar, he countered. I didn't send the booze home for the night. I smiled. You asked before to see where I lived. You didn't like not knowing about a secret space above your casino. I have nothing else to offer you, my friend. If it puts you at ease, then come on, I'll show you. Not sure Intrepid or the RCMP would approve of bringing up a criminal to our apartment, Alton, Olive said, but she didn't sound too serious. I showed him the button combination to open the secret passage at the back wall of the elevator. We exited together, and he seemed fascinated. I could hear the Hydra shortwave radio beeping before we reached the door, and I understood the name being repeated over and over. My chin sagged against my chest. What is it? Adamo asked. I opened the door. The dits and dahs continued. Charles Albrecht. Charles Albrecht. Charles Albrecht. Good news, Adamo, I said. You don't have to call your dad tomorrow. He cocked an eyebrow. I told him. We drank, and he passed out in the chair by the fire. I watched Frost crawl slowly up the window. Olive's invisible arms weaved under mine, and she pressed her hands against my chest. Can you feel my heart? I asked her.
I can't feel anything,
she admitted.
but I know that's beating, and that's enough for me today. Olive.
Shh. She soothed again, like so many times.
That's enough for me today.
Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.